And I try to keep that mindset whenever I'm at work that these results actually mean something. It could mean that inpatient on the floor could be going home today, or it could be them staying for another week. So having that mindset really helps keep things real, that it's not just a name on a tube, that there is a patient's life behind this. This is somebody's daughter, somebody's mother. This is a real life behind this patient sample. So it is our role to make sure that they have the best and most accurate results because important medical decisions are being made on them.
Welcome to the People of Pathology podcast. I'm Dennis Strink. On this podcast, we explore pathology one story at a time and connect with the people behind the diagnosis. We all have our own story of how we found this field, and for some, that story is a personal one. Coraliz Martinez is a medical laboratory scientist, and she found this field through her own experience of being a patient. We'll see how her unique perspective from being on the other side of the diagnosis helps her keep in mind the person behind the lab sample. All right, let's hear the story of resilience from Coraliz Martinez. Thank you so much for being here with me today. This is going to be interesting and a very personal conversation for sure.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Let's start, I guess, back at the beginning then. So when you were 10 years old, you were diagnosed with osteosarcoma after what seemed like a routine injury. Can we go back to that moment and what you, and I guess your family too, what you were going through?
Yeah, so my story started in January of 2011 when I was at school during PE class and my leg was kicked by accident. And after that incident, my leg just continued to swell and swell until it was roughly about the size of a baseball. And during that time, I was going from doctor to doctor and getting all these scans, and nobody really knew what was going on. And it wasn't until March when I got a biopsy that a doctor gave me that diagnosis of osteosarcoma. And, just throughout that process, my family was always very calm and optimistic, and that really made the process go so much smoother in a way that I had that mindset of, okay, I'm sick right now. I just need to get treatment and everything will get better. I just have to take it one day at a time. And having that perspective and support really helped me get through a lot of things.
So at the time you were 10, how much did you understand what was going on?
I did not understand much of what was going on. Like, really going through that, I just basically was told, "Hey, you're sick. You're gonna get this treatment, and then things will get better. Things will go back to normal." So I didn't really understand the extent of what cancer was and what it does to the body like how I do now.
Okay. All right. So you ended up going to St. Jude for treatment. And in that, I'm going to link the article in the show notes, but there was an article that it was a kind of an interview with you. And you described arriving at St. Jude and it was late at night and you immediately felt welcomed there. Can you kind of paint that picture? What was that like?
Yeah, so we arrived at St. Jude pretty late at night. It was around 1 a.m. And I just remember going through those doors and feeling so welcomed, and everyone was just so friendly and reassuring. And it was just something so different that you don't see at other hospitals. And what really stood out to me was just how vibrant and colorful the actual hospital is as well. And compared to your average hospitals, it's just plain white walls, plain white floors. And as a kid, it can be intimidating and scary. So the fact that when you walk through those doors at St. Jude and you're just met with artwork everywhere, murals on the wall, it's just full of life and color. And that's not something you typically see at your average hospital. And never had I been to a hospital where everyone just seemed so happy, even down to the patients themselves. Like, yes, they are going through this treatment and going through this experience, but at St. Jude, they make you feel so comfortable and relaxed that it never really felt like that. And they would always host events for patients and their families, like art sessions, games, even bringing out the therapy dogs for patients to pet. So I've just never seen any hospital do things like that. And it really helped keep you calm and give you that positive mindset.
That seems like exactly what you would have needed at the time. I imagine you were pretty scaredy, you and your family, right?
Yeah, it was scary, especially your first week there. You're just going to several appointments and they're just discussing your treatment. You just don't have an understanding of what is really going on. And, they're using all this big terminology and they try to break it down for you. But at the end of the day, you're kind of just like, okay, I just need to go through this treatment and then things will get better. So,
You mentioned in the article that one of your inspirations there at St. Jude was there was a nurse who was working with one hand. And it got to think that must have been, I mean, obviously you're mentioning it now, so that must have really had an impression on you. Can you tell me about her and her influence on you?
yeah. So, one of my favorite things about St. Jude was the fact that so many of the people that work there were former patients. And I just think, as a patient, that's really inspiring to see because not only do these healthcare professionals understand what you're going through, but they've also been in that same exact position in that same hospital. So,
Yeah.
it's really inspiring for patients to be able to look at their nurse and doctor and be like, "Hey, they went exactly through what I went through," and to see how well and amazing they turned out. Like, look at all of the things that they're doing, even going through something like that. So, especially after my surgery where I had my leg amputated and seeing that nurse really gave me hope and really inspired me like, hey, if she can do all of these things with just one hand, I mean, on her own, then I'm going to turn out and be okay. And it was just something reassuring to see. And it was just really beautiful.
Mhm. Mhm. Again, that must have been exactly what you needed at the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely was.
Mhm. Okay, a few years later, in high school, you realized you wanted to work in lab science, helping patients behind the scenes. And I have to think your own experiences, especially at St. Jude, was motivation for this. Is that true, or were there some other influences that helped you make this decision too?
Yeah, definitely. Like after my experience with St. Jude, I knew I wanted to be in the medical field. I was just unsure of what I wanted to do specifically, just because I was interested in everything in the medical field. And it wasn't until freshman year of college when I was going for orientation where an advisor mentioned the field of medical laboratory science. And I was like, well, that sounds interesting. So that day I went home and I looked into it and I realized that this is exactly what I wanted to do. I just never knew what it was called. And it felt like a perfect fit for me just because I love, the science behind everything, research, anything analytical. And I'm still involved with patient care, but I play a role behind the scenes. So it just seemed like a perfect fit for me.
I work in the lab too. I'm a pathologist assistant, so that behind the scenes role, I can totally understand that. For me, having that sort of direct patient care, I guess at the time, really didn't appeal to me too much. Is that was that the same for you? Like you didn't really want to direct contact with patients?
Yeah. Well, at first, I remember I was interested in pediatric oncology.
Okay.
And, when I was going for my orientation, I was going to sign up to be a biology major. And I was still a little bit unsure about it just because, having to work with kids with cancer, I feel like that is such an emotional strain as well. And I just knew I wanted to do something in the medical field. So when she said that, I just never knew what that field was until she mentioned it to me. And I was
Mhm.
like, you know what, this is absolutely perfect because I'm still involved with that patient care, but I won't have that direct contact. But I'm still a big part. I play a big role in their care, making sure that they get the treatment that they need.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I wanted to mention about what you said. The fact that you hadn't heard about this field until college, which is a problem. And I've had other people on the podcast that have talked about this, that it seems like this should be talked about with high school students, like these fields are out there, are available, and this might appeal to a lot of people.
Yeah, I definitely agree, especially because there is such a shortage in this
Yep.
field. And I think just people aren't aware that we exist, and it is a really interesting and fulfilling field to be in, and you really do play a role in patient care because in order to make any medical decisions, you really need those lab results. You need those tests done. So it is important to get the word out that this field does exist because I know there are other people that are interested and they're just like me, where I never knew what this field was called. I didn't know to call it and how to go that route.
Yes, same for me. All right, so let's get into that route. And so once you decided you wanted to be a medical laboratory scientist, how did you go about this?
Yeah. So once I realized I wanted to pursue MLS, I went to university. I graduated through their honors program with a bachelor's degree in MLS. And shortly after I graduated, I went and took my boards exam and became ASCP certified. So now I'm working as a MLS, and I recently stepped into the role of technical supervisor in my lab. So in my day to day, I'm not only running and analyzing patient samples across our different areas like, chemistry, hematology, microbiology, but I'm also overseeing quality control, maintaining instrumentation, and making sure our lab meets regulatory standards. So it's definitely a surreal experience just because I remember starting off as a lab assistant during my clinicals here, and then once I graduated and got certified, I became MLS, and here I am as a technical supervisor, so it's definitely surreal.
I believe that. I believe that. Do you think working as a lab assistant during your clinicals, do you think that was helpful?
It definitely was. I really just wanted to get more experience than I was getting at my clinicals there. So there being able to learn more about like troubleshooting or, hey, this patient sample looks diluted or, this patient sample is contaminated. So being able to work along my clinicals really helped me better troubleshoot and release patient results.
I think the troubleshooting aspect is what's super important. And I think people outside of the labs sure don't know about that. They just think that, these blood tubes or whatever specimen goes to the lab and just goes into the machine. But there's a lot of human judgment there, especially the troubleshooting part, right?
Yeah, there is so much more than just putting it on the machine. Like, if I'm in hematology and I'm running a patient sample and I see that the platelets are like a 7, I'm going to check that tube and I'm pretty sure there's going to be a clot in there and you just can't release those results. Or if I'm in chemistry and you know, the electrolytes are looking low, the glucose is looking low, I'm going to start thinking, hey, this sample may be diluted. And just being able to catch that before it releases is really important because you really don't want to give out false results like that, especially if you know, say that hematology sample's diluted, the hemoglobin's low, you don't want to give that patient unnecessary blood that they don't need. And that could give them a reaction if it's not needed. Being able to catch those errors, like as a MLS, we are a patient's biggest advocate. We want to make sure that they're getting the best results because doctors are acting on those results. So if you're giving out bad results, they're not going to be getting the treatment they need. And you can make that patient worse off than they already were.
Yeah, there's definitely your role has a huge impact on patient treatment. And I think more people need to know about that.
Definitely.
You mentioned hematology, chemistry, microbiology. Do you have a favorite area that you like to work in?
Yes, definitely my favorite area is chemistry. When I start off my clinicals, I actually started off in chemistry. And yeah, I remember walking into the lab on my first day and just looking at those instruments because chemistry, there are so many instruments in there. And I just remember feeling so intimidated like, how am I going to learn all of this? What are these machines doing? And something that I just really love about chemistry is that it always stays busy. For every one patient sample you get in hematology, you're getting 5 in chemistry. So
Oh,
you're
wow.
always moving in chemistry, and there's just so many tests to be ran. But I also like the troubleshooting aspect of it as well, just trying to figure out like, okay, these results are looking a little bit wonky. What's going on?
Hmm.
Or even with the instruments themselves, like at our lab, our instruments are pretty old and they're breaking down pretty frequently. So you kind of get used to certain errors being like, okay, well, this I just need to already know what I need to do to fix this. Or sometimes you may have to call service, but
Hmm.
I just love everything about chemistry. It's definitely one of my favorite areas for sure.
This is the People of Pathology podcast with our guest, Coraliz Martinez. We'll be right back. Are you thinking about applying to a pathologist assistance program and feeling a little lost? That's why I created the Path to PathA, your PA school application blueprint. This is a step-by-step prep course that gives you everything you need for a strong application. From finding shadowing to writing a standout personal statement to prepping for interviews, this course was made to help you feel informed, confident, and ready. Visit www.thepath2patha.com to join the mailing list. You'll be the first to hear when the course launches. Your path starts here. LabVine is an interactive online learning platform where laboratory professionals learn, develop, and discover by sharing knowledge and building on each other's experience. The platform provides global access to internationally accredited laboratory-specific courses and other resources developed by lab specialists, like us, for the laboratory industry. LabVine is free to sign up, and you can use the link in the show notes to get started. And now for the rest of my conversation with Coraliz Martinez on the People of Pathology podcast. There was a quote from you in this, again, going back to this article, and I love this. You said that behind every sample, there's a real person with a story. Great quote. I wonder, what does this mean to you?
I remember during my time at St. Jude, after you would finish a chemotherapy set, as long as your lab results looked good and your health was good, they would let you go home for a week. And I remember always hoping that my lab results looked good and everything else was fine so I could go home for that week, have a break, and
Sure.
see family just because it was just me and my mom up there while my dad stayed home to work and my brother was at school at the time. So I remember always hoping that everything looked good. And I try to keep that mindset whenever I'm at work that these results actually mean something. It could mean that inpatient on the floor could be going home today, or it could be them staying for another week. So having that mindset really helps keep things real, that it's not just a name on a tube, that there is a patient's life behind this. This is somebody's daughter, somebody's mother. This is a real life behind this patient sample. So it is our role to make sure that they have the best and most accurate results because important medical decisions are being made on them.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking about this. My role is obviously a little different than yours, but still, I'm dealing with patient samples, and sometimes it gets, really busy, high pressure. And I wonder, because I've been thinking about this a lot, keeping in mind that there's a patient behind every specimen, every sample. How do you keep that in mind when it's really busy, when you got to make service calls for your machines, you got to do a lot of QA. How do you keep that perspective in mind?
Some days it can be really hard just because you're just getting flooded with patient samples or I mean, this is something that you face daily in chemistry because one of the instruments is down and you're trying to get these patient samples in. And we also have a cancer center in-house. So
Uh-huh.
having that, you're always going to have some weird looking results compared to the other people that are on the floors. And you're just trying to make sure that you're turning out those best possible results because that's, someone that's undergoing treatment and that's a family life right there. So just trying to keep that perspective of that is someone. And something that really helped remind me of that was during my clinicals when I was doing my rotation in blood bank, our, our teacher was telling us how pre-warming the blood works, how it helps, get rid of rouleau and make sure that the patient doesn't have a reaction. And some of us, we weren't kind of comprehending that concept fully. And she said, you know what? let's go onto the floor. This person's going to receive some blood so you can kind of see how that works. And we went up there to the infusion center and we got to see how they set up the blood and how they pre-warmed it. And it really put it into perspective, especially just seeing the patient there. Like, look, our work really matters, like making sure this blood is compatible with them, that there's no antibodies. So seeing that really reminded me that behind this sample, behind this label, there is a face to the name and there is a real life at line.
I like that a lot. That sounds like a really great experience for students. I want to kind of switch subjects a little bit here. So you're also an artist, and this is interesting to me because again, I've noticed this connection between kind of pathology and lab medicine and art. There's a lot of people that kind of have both interests. So this is interesting to me, and I want to talk about this. How did you become interested in art?
Yeah, so art has always been a big part of my life. My dad loved art and he was the one that taught me and showed me how to draw and paint. And it was something that we really bonded over. And it became one of my favorite hobbies. And I really love anything that involves art, but I especially love acrylic painting, especially painting flowers and landscapes. I just think there's something really peaceful and just beautiful about it. And it's just become one of my favorite hobbies and one of my favorite ways to express my creativity.
Okay, I see. Do you feel like there's a connection between your work in the lab and your art? Because, it's a lot of patterns, right? But both interests have patterns to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it definitely does. I definitely feel like art and science, they go together. And with art, you really need to have patience. You have to pay attention to details and be able to step back and look at the bigger picture. And that's something that the lab requires as well. I mean, when you're going through those rushes and you're flooded with patient samples, you really need to slow down and be patient, making sure that you're doing everything right, that you're not swapping a patient sample or turning out results that shouldn't be turned out. And just paying attention to those tiny details, making sure you're doing every step correctly, and just being able to see the bigger picture. Because if I'm working in chemistry, I shouldn't dismiss hematology's results. If I think that my patient sample is diluted, I'm going to go over to hematology and say, "Hey, how are your results looking? How's that hemoglobin looking? How's everything, looking?" So being able to work together as a team is really important. So art and science really, they really do go together. They really make you look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So you still return to St. Jude every 5 years as part of it's called the Life Study. And I want to, can you tell me what this study is? And then I want to get into like, what was it like to go back there?
Yeah, so the St. Jude Life Study, it helps with their research. So they basically perform a bunch of different tests, and they're just not like your normal scans or anything. I mean, they are completely different tests. Like you'll have like a fitness test, you'll have kind of like an IQ test. I mean, they're very random, but it helps with their study to see how patients are doing post treatment. So it's something that I enjoy doing. I enjoy coming back to their campus and seeing what they're up to. And it's just a really neat experience to return to St. Jude as a survivor, but also as someone who works in healthcare, because I'm able to see it through a completely different lens and I have a better understanding of the medical side of things, especially when they're discussing my lab results or talking about my health. I feel like I'm able to ask more in-depth questions and have a better understanding overall. So it's really exciting to go back and see what they're up to, because every time I go back, there's either some sort of construction going on, or they've added a new research building, or more patient care things. So it's just a really cool experience going back to do their St. Jude study.
Hmm. Do you get to spend any time with the current patients?
I see the patients in the halls, but if I'm interacting with patients, it's also going to be patients that are in that Jude life study.
Oh, I see. Okay. Now, so the first time you went back there, since your own treatment, what was that like? How did that feel?
After you finish treatment, they make you go back every 3 months, and then it'll be 6 months yearly, and then you switch over to St. Jude Life Study, and it's about every five
Oh,
years.
okay.
And just going back every, 3 months, it definitely didn't hit like it does now, just because it was so recent still. I mean, you're still pretty young and, I mean, you understand that you went through this process and they focus on short-term effects. They're focusing to see if you have a recurrence of your cancer. And then after those 5 years, it's more so long-term effects. And, it's a different experience than when I go back today.
Okay. I understand that. You've shared that one of your dreams is to return to St. Jude as part of the team, to work there. And I'm curious about that. I mean, I can completely understand that, especially inspired by the nurse that we talked about earlier. What do you think that kind of full circle moment would mean to you?
Yeah, to come back to St. Jude and work there would honestly mean the world to me. That hospital, they changed my life, and to be able to walk back through those doors, not as a patient, but as part of the team that makes a difference for other patients and their families would be the ultimate full circle moment. And for me, it would be more than just a job. It would be a way to give back to the place that gave me a second chance at life, and to see other survivors that have gone on there to work. It's really inspiring to know that you can turn such a difficult chapter of your life into something that helps others. And I think it would be amazing to be part of that community where you're not only surrounded by people who love science and medicine, but you're also surrounded by people that want to give back and help other patients and their families. And they understand what they went through. So I feel like when you have that experience, you're able to give a better patient care and patient interaction just because you know exactly what they're going through. So for me, it would definitely be fulfilling to make an impact on patients in the same hospital that helped change my life.
That makes a lot of sense. So your story is one of resilience and overcoming challenges, which and that's why I wanted to talk to you. For you personally, how do you hope that your experiences help to inspire other people?
Yeah, I hope that my experience helps others know that things do get better. You're always going to face obstacles and setbacks in life, but what matters the most is that you continue to move forward. You continue to pick yourself back up, even when things feel impossible. So, going through my experience really gave me a new perspective to life, and it gave me a drive to want to help others and give back. So, if sharing my journey can give hope to someone who's maybe currently in treatment or someone who's wanting to pursue healthcare and make an impact, then that's really all that matters. And at the end of the day, I just want my story to be a reminder that even the hardest challenges can be turned into something positive, and it is possible to not only survive, but to thrive in life and to use that experience to help others.
I love it. I love it. That's a great message. I think that's a good place for us to end. Coraliz, this has been an amazing conversation, very inspiring, and I'm very appreciative that you took the time to tell your story here. So, Coraliz Martinez, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
If you're looking for another episode of the People of Pathology podcast to check out after this one, here's a clip from my interview with Angela Tomei Robinson as we talk about some ways to advocate for the medical laboratory profession.
And as I talked about with the coalition in New York State, it was such a collaboration of so many, and we gained bipartisan support in our state with our governor and our senators and representatives. And it was everyone, scientists, technologists, technicians, they all believed that the profession had the right and deserved the right to be licensed to practice their profession. I recently was involved with an article for ASCLS, and I said professionalism is both a science and an art. It needs us individually as well as together for that one strong voice. And I've always believed, Dennis, that one individual can make a difference, but a group of individuals can make all the difference in the world. And despite the challenges today, and their severe challenges, I still believe this, because again, it's better to do something than to do nothing.
You can hear more from Angela Tomei Robinson in episode 96. All right, big thanks to Coraliz Martinez. What an inspiring conversation. Also, I want to thank Angela Tomei Robinson for sharing the article that led to this interview. Coraliz's story is one of resilience, gratitude, and the ability to transform hardship into hope. Her time at St. Jude planted a seed, a calling to serve in healthcare. Coraliz found her place behind the scenes as a medical laboratory scientist. It's a role that requires precision, discipline, and unwavering focus because every sample represents a person whose future may depend on accurate results. And for Coraliz, that's deeply personal. She knows firsthand what those lab results can mean for patients and families, the weight they carry, and the hope that they can bring. Because of her own experience, Coraliz is better able to keep in mind that there is a patient behind every sample, and they are depending on us for answers. Just like she depended on the staff at St. Jude when she arrived there in the middle of the night. Every 5 years, Coraliz returns to St. Jude as part of the LIFE study, contributing to research that seeks to understand the long-term effects of childhood cancer treatment. As she said, each visit feels like coming home, and her dream is to one day return to St. Jude, not as a patient, but as part of the team, giving back to the place that gave her a second chance at life. Her story is more than just a journey of survival. It's a message of hope for anyone facing adversity. Coraliz reminds us that challenges don't have to define us. They can inspire us. They can lead us toward purpose, passion, and a life that helps others. I hope her words inspired you as they did me. No matter what part you have in this amazing field, remember that your work is making a difference in people's lives every single day. I'll have a link in the show notes to the article that we talked about today. Don't forget you can follow this show on Instagram or Twitter, or if you really want to connect with me, you can find me most of the time on LinkedIn. Thank you for continuing to share the show with others. Together, let's inspire the next generation of pathologists and laboratory professionals. This show is a member of Health Podcast Network. Thanks for listening. I'm Dennis Strank, and I'll talk to you next time on the People of Pathology podcast.